Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 24 playthrough of the Buffalo Wings. We are just past the trade deadline in the 2027 season. The Buffalo Wings are having a difficult second year in Major League Baseball, 44 and 60 record, 26 games behind, and seventh place in the 8-team National League East. So things have not been going particularly well on the field. We have played a bit better over the last couple of weeks. We made 4 trades during the last episode, shedding 3 guys who were starters on our team in their 30s. Catcher Christian Vasquez, who was likely in his final year with us. Second baseman Tommy Edman, who was likely in his final year with us. And then Romash Nakajima, the first baseman from Japan, who we signed to a contract this past offseason. Didn't become the type of hitter that we had hoped. And we were on the hook for $11 million with him next year. Wanted to get that contract off the books. So we traded those 3 guys away, and we also traded away the left-handed reliever Garrett Crochet, who we had picked in the Rule 5 draft, who we had a team option on for $9 million next season that we were extremely unlikely to execute. So tried to get the team a little bit younger and a little more cost effective. We have at this point now opened up some money for extensions, which is positive. And we have actually made a offer as well to one of our players for an extension. The cryptically nomenclatured fake name viewer suggested in the comments to our last episode that we consider trying to extend Andrew Painter, who we picked up for the top prospect in our farm system this past offseason, Andres Medina. Painter's had a rough year, 5-11 with a 4.75 ERA. He did just pitch a 2-hit shutout in his last performance, and is 24 years old, is still very talented. You can see he's due to make around $8.2 million and around $13.3 million in his 2 arbitration years that he has left. Fake name suggested maybe we take this opportunity to try to sign him, buy out those arbitration years, and offer him a longer-term deal. And that's exactly what we have tried to do. We just made an offer to him. He was only looking for a 1-year deal, looking for more than his arbitration number. We asked him about an 8-year deal, and he said he was looking for about $14 million average per year. We offered him 8 years, $100 million total, which would be a $12.5 million average for the next 8 years, and he is considering that right now. I think if he becomes the pitcher we think he can become, and stays healthy, that's a pretty good deal for us, as well as a lot of security for him with a 9-figure deal. We'll see what he comes back with to us in the coming days. Other than that, our goal for these last couple months of the season is to have the team play better on the field than it has thus far. Our goal for August, September, and October is to have the Wings with a winning record. Not the most ambitious goal in the world, but given that we're 16 games under over the first 4 months of the season, if we can play 500 ball over our last, looks like it's 58 games, I would view that as positive. So the goal is to go 30 and 58, 30 and 28. We don't want to be losing 118 games. Go 30 and 28 if I could do some simple math over these last couple of months of the season. And if we are able to get those 30 wins over the last couple months, that'll put us up to 74 wins, which would actually be better than the 71 that we were at a year ago. So it would represent a small amount of progress, not as much progress as we had hoped when we started this season, but if the youth movement can result in some more success on the field over these last 2 months of the season, at least we can head into the off season and potentially 2028 feeling somewhat better about the team than we do right now. And the good news is we got the month of August off to a good start with an 8-4 win over the Cubs. The bad news is we just lost shortstop Khalil Watson to a strained hammy for 5 weeks. Our starting shortstop Kevin Made is out for another 4 weeks, so we're going to have to piece things together with the likes of Tommy Troy and Deshaun Seifu at shortstop for the next several weeks. Obviously, trading away Tommy Edman weakened our middle infield as well, but since he was not in our long-term plans, I think it made sense to get what we could get from him. But certainly the two best defensive shortstops on our team being on the IL for the next month or so could put a crimp in our ability to have that above 500 record over this last couple months of the season. And to fill that hole on the roster, we're going to bring up Diego Velasquez, a guy that we picked in the expansion draft about a year and a half ago. He's spent the last 2 years in AA Utica and this year AAA Albany, hitting .274 with 13 homers, so his bat has been okay. Looking at his profile, though, other than avoiding strikeouts, he looks like he's going to struggle at the major league level, but definitely gives us a decent backup infielder, hopefully, and we'll see what he can do in a few at-bats at the major league level. And as we look ahead to the next week, we've got three home games against the Padres to finish up this existing homestand, then a brief 4-game road trip to Pittsburgh before we've got home games against Washington and Montreal to get us midway through the month. Good that we've got the win to start off the month of August and our goal of being above 500 the rest of the way at this point. Obviously, would prefer that we have Made or Watson to play shortstop for us, but we'll see what we can do. We are actually going to play Diego Velasquez as our starting shortstop against right-handed pitching. We're going to let Tommy Troy play as shortstop against left-handed pitching. So a couple of youngsters who don't have the greatest bats in the world will be getting some playing time here. And it ended up being a pretty solid week for the Wings. You can see Jace Barofin here just had a 8-game extra base hit streak and pretty productive on the field. We swept the Padres at home and we took 2 out of 4 against Pittsburgh on the road. Got an off day today before we begin that homestand that I talked about against the Nationals and the Expos. Taking a look at the standing, Nationals are one of the better teams in the NL East. They are in a wild card spot at this point, up 3 on the 4th wild card spot. The Expos are just barely ahead of us in the standings. They've won 7 in a row, though. So that's a team that, in a perfect world, would certainly love to get past the Expos and get out of 7th place. We finished tied for last season. It seems pretty clear that we're not going to be last this year, but would love to have a little bit of prospect in the stand, a little bit of progress in the standings, and at the very least, get up to 6th in the standings. And certainly taking at least 2 out of 3 against the Expos at home this upcoming week should help us with that. I've also been doing a little bit of scouting, but would love to hear back from Painter on that contract offer that we've made. You can see our latest scouting report on Painter. We're only viewing him as a 2.5-star guy with 3.5-star potential, but has a 4-pitch arsenal of 4 above average to borderline excellent pitches, and we think his stuff, movement, and control are all a bit above average. So we'll see what happens with that offer we've made to him. Still waiting to hear exactly what he thinks about that $100 million offer over 8 years. And we've split the first 2 games with Washington, but more importantly, we have heard back from Andrew Painter, and he is signed with us for that 8-year extension. So that should be some good news for us. As I mentioned, salaries or I think I mentioned that we were a little under his expected arbitration numbers of 8 and 12 million for the next 2 years. And then we've got him 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, and then a team option for 10. So after the third year of the deal, 27 years old, numbers start coming down a little bit to give us a little bit more financial flexibility. 8 years, 100 million, I think, is a potentially really good bargain for us. And it does put us in a position now where hopefully with Ohtani locked up, those team options on Shane Bieber that, given his 9-4 record and 2.43 ERA, look potentially really great. And the fact that we've now got Painter locked up for many years to come should have our top 3 starting pitchers locked in for the next 2+ seasons, which hopefully will put us in a decent position as far as not having to necessarily overpay for some more starting pitching in the off seasons. And unfortunately, our homestand was not particularly successful. We lost 2 out of 3 to both Washington and Montreal at home. That said, we're still 8-6 on the month. Just going to get a little more challenging over the rest of the month. We've only got 3 home games left, a weekend series against the Brewers at the end of this week, and then we begin a pretty long road trip that's going to take us through Miami, Washington, the Mets, and into September before we're home again on September 3rd. So the 8-6 record for the month of August is fine. But the fact that we want to be over 500 for the month, and we've only got 3 home games left, probably going to make it a little challenging to achieve that goal. And our Wings went 500 over the last week. We lost 2 out of 3 in Minnesota, but we did take 2 out of 3 in that last homestand for a couple of weeks against Milwaukee. So now it's just a matter of seeing how we do on this road trip against divisional foes. We've got 4 against Miami, 3 against Washington, and then 2 against the Mets. Taking a look at the standings, the Mets, Washington, and Miami all have winning records. Washington and the Mets are the top 2 teams in the wild card. So certainly up against teams that are better on paper than we are. That said, we have made some progress since that horrible losing streak to start off the month of July. 14 games under 500, certainly not where we hope to be and expected to be, but it is what it is. Taking a look at the leaderboard, Deshaun Seifu, who we brought up after a couple of months of seasoning in the minors, last year's number 1 overall pick, even in limited time, is 3rd in the National League with 30 stolen bases. You can see we've had 16-game hitting streaks from Jace Barofin and Nolan Jones. Shane Bieber continues to lead the National League in ERA. So feels like we're making some progress. Seifu in particular hitting .329 for us at the major league level, 19 doubles and 8 triples and 222 at-bats, basically performing the way we would have hoped. And then certainly 30 out of 33 stolen bases is incredibly productive on the base paths. Weren't expecting much home run power, but our expectation with the contact, the gap power, and the speed was going to be a crazy number of extra base hits, and he certainly seems to be producing pretty well for us. 137 OPS plus, 137 WRC plus, and a 2.4 WAR. I still think third base may ultimately be his best position, but with all of the injuries we've had to the middle infield, he's been playing a lot for us at second base most recently. And this past week definitely started off better than it ended up. We did take 3 out of 4 in Miami, but then we were swept in a 3-game series in Washington. The pitching staff hit pretty hard, giving up 15, 10, and 11 runs in those 3 games. So we've got 1 left against the Mets. I believe that means we are 1 game over 500 for the month. Yeah, we're 14 and 13 for the month. So if we win, we've had our best month of the season. If we lose, we're still 500 for the month, and then we just got to hope that we're above 500 for September and October. One other good piece of news, Kevin Made, shortstop, ready to come off the IL. Given that we've got an off day today and then a game tomorrow, we'll probably send him down for a very quick rehab assignment. Hopefully he can play a game or two in Albany and only miss one game at the major league level. And then presumably we'll be moving on from Diego Velasquez. Let's see what he's done for us. He's been respectable-ish. Hit 225 with 2 home runs and 71 at-bats. A little below replacement level. So I guess respectable-ish maybe being a bit generous since he's below replacement level. But doesn't seem like it's been a total disaster. But certainly the ability to get Made back in the lineup for him. And then hopefully only a week away from Khalil Watson. And with Watson, we may not even need to send somebody down since we'll be past September roster expansion once he's available. And unfortunately, it looks like we'll be waiting a little longer than expected for Khalil Watson. We thought he was a week away, but now had a bit of a setback, and that strained hammy not healing as quickly as we would have liked. So he's going to be gone for a little while longer. Made, I forgot that he had been down at the beginning of the year. I don't know if have to look at the game log. Did he just play a game or not? He did. Okay, he got 1 at bat. Probably will give him one more day, and then we'll bring him up on September 1st as well. And unfortunately, you can see Made, who's had a couple of injuries this year, is now fragile as far as his injury proneness. I think he's kind of developed to a point where he's a more than competent defensive shortstop for us. Not a Gold Glove caliber guy, but somebody that's at least more than respectable out there. But certainly that fragile injury proneness gives me a little bit of pause about thinking that we're going to be able to successfully build around him for the next several seasons. And unfortunately, we did lose the last game of the month to the Mets, so a 14-14 record for the month of August. So still our second best month of the year. But we're going to have a winning record here in September and those final 3 games in October to ensure that our goal of having a winning record over the last 2+ months of the season is executed upon. And as far as the 2 guys we added to the 26-man roster to make it a 28-man roster with roster expansion, we brought Made off of the injured list. He did play 1 more game in Albany for us since we last checked in on him. And then we also brought up the relief pitcher Cam Wynn, 28-year-old, really good stuff, above average-ish movement, below average-ish control, 4-pitch arsenal. Another guy that we did pick up in the expansion draft. He was 5-2 with 19 saves and 69 strikeouts and 49 1/3 innings pitched in AAA for us. Spent some time with us last year as well. We've got a number of arbitration eligible middle reliever types who are starting to get into the $3, $4, $5, $6 million range as far as their arbitration numbers. So it's conceivable we'll be looking to move on from some of those guys next season. The guys I'm thinking about are Mike Baumann, 6.8, Mike Burrows, 4.6, Bryce Miller, 4.4, Max Meyer, 3.2. Brandon Williamson's done such a good job this year as a starter that probably will bring him back at 4.3. Javier Atencio, our closer, at 3.7. All of those guys aren't going to be back with us, and Cam Wynn, certainly at a number of around $1.6 million, could be a more cost-effective option than some of those players next year. So hopefully he'll perform well over this last month plus of the season for us. And we're off to a 500 start in the month of September. Lost the final game of that road trip to the Mets, but did take 2 out of 3 against the White Sox. We're home for the next week. We've got 3 against Texas, 3 against the Giants. Taking a look at the standings, Texas is 61 and 76. The Giants are 56 and 82. So Giants actually a little worse than us. The Rangers are half a game ahead of us in the standings. Certainly would think if our goal is to be above 500 over these last couple months of the season, feel like we've got to get at least 4 out of 6 this week at home against these 2 fellow mediocre teams. And unfortunately, we only managed a 500 record for the homestand. We took 2 out of 3 against Texas, but then we lost 2 out of 3 to San Francisco. And now we've got a real long road trip for the next 2 weeks ahead of us. 3 in Arizona, 3 at St. Louis, 4 at Montreal, followed by 3 at Atlanta before we come back home to finish off the season at home against the 2 Pennsylvania teams, the Pirates and the Phillies. So not a perfect schedule for us to hopefully finish over 500 for the last couple months of the season. You can see we're flat-footed, 19 and 19 since the beginning of August. So just need to be 1 game over 500 the rest of the way to meet our goal. But certainly with the way that the schedule is stacked up with all those road games, probably going to be a bit of a challenge. We are now 12th in the National League in runs scored, and we've dipped to 11th in runs allowed. There's been a few games recently where we've given up a lot of runs. We've had some really good games, holding the Rangers to 1 run and 3 runs. But then, we gave up 7 to Texas, 11 to Chicago, 8 to the Giants, 7 to the Mets. So some crooked numbers against us in a lot of innings in some of those performances, I'm sure. So we've got the Diamondbacks and the Cardinals this upcoming week. Taking a look at the standings, the Diamondbacks and Cardinals are both around 500. Certainly they'll probably be favored for us more often than not when we are on the road against those teams. But we're going to have to win some games against some teams that are better than us if we want to finish up this season the way that we hope to. And the month of September is starting to be a bit unkind to us. We were swept by Arizona, 2 one-run losses, and you can see at this point we have now lost 6 of our last 7. Feels like we're really bad in one-run games. I'm sure some of you probably noticed this when I put up the team statistics before. I didn't, but 12 and 25 in one-run games. So that's a pretty brutal record for us. We are holding on to dear life to being above 500 on the road, but that or at home. But that 352 winning percentage on the road has had a real negative impact on us, and we are now 3 games under 500 for the month of September, and we've still got a tough series ahead of us against the Cardinals. Hopefully we can do some damage against them. Hopefully we like day games. So in the most inevitable news of the season, we're not going to make the playoffs this year. We lost 2 out of 3 in St. Louis, so it's been a rough stretch here over the last week and a half at this point. Still got 7 more road games before we get back home at Montreal, at Atlanta. Taking a look at the standings, Expos well ahead of us in the standings, and Atlanta obviously in contention for a division title. At the very least, they are 15.5 up on the second wild card spot. So the NL East title between the Mets and the Braves looks like it's going to be a crazy race. And it looks like whoever wins that is also going to have the best record in baseball and home field advantage throughout the playoffs, while whoever loses it is going to be in a wild card series. So winning the division matters and results in rewards. Our hope at this point is maybe we can do some damage against the Braves and make things a little easier for the Mets. And we did end up with a winning record for the week. We took 3 out of 4 in Montreal before losing 2 out of 3 in Atlanta. So now at this point, we've got 3 at home against Pittsburgh and then 4 at home against Philadelphia to finish off the season. We're at 68 wins. So we've got to win 3 of those 7 to match the 71 wins from last year. Certainly want to do better than that. So at a very minimum, we need to win 4 out of those final 7 games. And then as far as our goal of being above 500 down the stretch, we're going to have to do even better. If we go 5-2, that puts us just at 500 for the months of August, September, and October. So we got to go 6-1 to be over 500 down the stretch. So the good news is that we're at home. The bad news is that we've got to play probably our best baseball of the year to get the record where we would like it to be. One interesting piece of news that, and you can tell I don't look at league news all that often, but Jordan Westburg, the third baseman, 10 for 23 for the week, 4 homers and 10 ribbies, hitting .250 with 16 homers, 71 ribbies, and 62 runs scored for the season. So a nice week for him in that winning week for our Buffalo Wings. Taking a look at the standings, Pittsburgh is up 1 game for the final wild card spot, since there's 4 wild cards, still battling with Cincinnati, Montreal, and the Cubs for those final 2 spots. So we could do some damage to their playoff hopes. And then we're going to finish off with the last place Phillies, who look almost certain to finish with the worst record in baseball. So hopefully we can ensure that that happens and get some wins against the Phillies as they have to travel up to Buffalo for the final week of the season. Taking a look at the leaders, Deshaun Seifu, batting average has now dipped below 300 to 299, but he's still been a pretty productive player since we brought him up. 122 OPS plus, 121 WRC plus, a 3 WAR, 816 OPS. The contact, the gap power, and the speed is translating exactly as we had hoped into extra base hits, with 21 doubles and 14 triples and 341 at-bats, and a ridiculous stolen base success rate, 51 out of 56. So he seems to be becoming the type of offensive player we hoped that he would be when we brought him on board. Obviously, well, I don't know if it's obvious, but we're going to run one more scouting report here on him in the last week in the season. Would certainly love to eventually see him get that contact up to at least a 70, get the avoid Ks up to at least a 70, and we'd love to at least get that eye up to a 45 to hopefully draw a few more walks. At least he's not completely awful. When he came up at the end of last season, he literally drew 0 walks in his first 15 games with us. Now he's at least drawn 26 walks, which has helped get the 299 average up to a 364 on-base percentage. Clearly would hope that he can get that closer to 400 over time, but we're probably going to need him hitting 320, 330 for him to be able to do that realistically. But certainly a little better eye would be great to see. But last year's number 1 overall pick seems well on his way to becoming a very good offensive player. We're going to need to figure out what position he's going to play for the long term. We hope that some of our good coaching at the major league level may ultimately be a positive influence for him there. Taking a look, we've got outstanding infield teaching with Luis Martinez, and our bench coach, Luis Martinez, also has an excellent relationship with Deshaun Seifu. So hopefully he can impart some of that wisdom as far as fielding onto Seifu, and similarly Joey DeMonte, our legendary hitting coach, also has an excellent relationship with Seifu. So my hope is that he still can get a little better than he is over the next couple of seasons. But glad to see him being a pretty productive major league player at the age of 23 for us. And unfortunately, a season after we finished with 3 straight wins against Pittsburgh to eliminate them from playoff contention as they were hoping to sneak into a wild card spot, they took 2 out of 3 against us at home. So we're left here with 69 wins. We're not going to have a winning record for the final 2+ months of the season, even if we sweep the Phillies. I believe that just puts us at 500 over these last 58 games of the season. Yeah, we're 11-15 now. So certainly would hope that we can sweep this series against the Phillies, and then at least we can head into the offseason having been a 500 team over the last 35-40% of the season. But it's going to take not perfection, but pretty close to perfection to win 4 straight against the Phillies. And we did get the first win, which was big to get to 70. We certainly want to get over 71 and be better than last year. Barofin 1 for 2 with a homer and 3 walks, scored 4 times. Painter gets a W in his final start of the season. He's going to finish 11-15 with a 4.57 ERA for us. Sierra of 4.11 was the highest of his career. The whip of 148, definitely not great. I guess we can argue he cut his ERA by 3/4 of a run from last season to this season, and that ridiculous amount of homers he allowed a year ago in Philadelphia was not repeated here, pitching half his games in Buffalo. Got his WAR up to 2.5, but his ERA plus a little bit below average. His FIP minus very, very tiny amount above average. Clearly, with the fact we've got him signed to an 8-year, $100 million deal, we hope that he will be somewhat better than this going forward. Would love him to be a pretty effective number 2 starter for us rather than a marginal number 3 starter, which is kind of what he seems to be right now. So we'll see what he becomes in the coming years, but at least he's going to finish the year on a high note with a fine performance in his final game of the season. And we did also have an injury in that game. So Eric Pena, the young left fielder, ended up getting a decent amount of playing time with us and was pretty productive. 272 batting average, 25 doubles, 21 homers, and 452 at-bats. 804 OPS, 116 OPS plus, 118 WRC plus, only a WAR of 1.7. He's not a big-time defensive player. Did strike out a fair amount and doesn't draw a ton of walks, but was reasonably productive. I would feel a lot better about us if he was a 4th or 5th outfielder instead of a starting outfielder for us, but he was still more than respectable with the bat for us this year, but his season is over with that oblique strain. And that injury will allow us to bring Loydell Chappelle, last year's National League Rookie of the Year, back up to the majors. Struggled in Albany, hit 248 there. Did have 17 homers, so at least he had some pop in his bat. Only hit 219 with 3 homers and 233 at-bats before we sent him down. He's another guy who I think in a perfect situation is a 4th or 5th outfielder. He obviously didn't hit enough this year that we even kept him on the Major League roster, but hopefully he'll get a couple at-bats here in this final series of the year against the Phillies to maybe give him a little more confidence as he prepares for the 2028 season. And unfortunately, we lost games 2 of the series to the Phillies, so we're not going to have a 500 record over the last couple months of the season. Now the goal really becomes winning these last 2, so we can at least say that the team improved from our inaugural season in 2026 when we won 71 games. Lost 7-6. Vance Honeycutt did have a good game for us. The youngster, 1 for 4, but with a home run and 2 walks. Wondering if that, it was a grand slam home run. So that is good to see. Honeycutt has not had a Deshaun Seifu type of rookie year, but he's still been pretty productive since we brought him up. 275 average, 18 doubles and 16 homers and 320 at-bats. 129 OPS plus, 126 WRC plus, 2.1 WAR, 851 OPS. So he's really been very productive and also pretty speedy, 21 out of 24 stealing. So the team has certainly been respectable since we brought up Seifu and Honeycutt, which is good to see since those guys are hopefully going to be big parts of our future. Obviously, at this point, though, with a 71 season last year in our inaugural season, certainly hope that we can win these last 2 games of the year to at least be able to say that we were better this year than last year, even if it's only by 1 game. And we've at least matched last season with a 7-2 win over the Phillies. Shohei Ohtani goes out with a good performance for us. 3 hits, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts over 5 innings. Gets his record to 500 on the season. Not what we anticipated. We're certainly hoping for better, but did strike out 218 batters in 187 and a third innings. And his Sierra of 2.70 was exactly the same as it was a year ago. His whip a little higher. Definitely allowed a few more hits this season compared to last season with the Cubs. Hopefully he can build on his first season here with the Wings and be even more effective for us in 2028 and beyond. And we did get a win on the final day of the season, so we got to 72 wins. Not the 500 record that we were hoping for down the stretch, not the 500 record that we were hoping for the course of the season, but we did make progress. And if we continue at this rate of progress for the next 28 years, we'll become a 100-win team. So hopefully we can make more significant progress going forward. Shane Bieber ended up winning the ERA crown. Center fielder Miguel Blaise, who we picked up as a Rule 5 pick to be our center fielder, was a 2020 guy. Tyler McGill, finishing up the season, says he wants out. So we'll see what happens with that. He's a guy that we pulled from the starting rotation when he got off to a brutal start in his first 6 starts. You can see finishing the year with an 8.50 ERA. May be happy to let the miserably attitude Tyler McGill move on after this year, even though we do have him signed for a pretty reasonable contract. But a 9-0 victory in that final game of the season. Nick York 3 for 3 with 2 homers and a walk. Brandon Williamson, the guy that replaced Tyler McGill as our number 5 starter, 2 hits, 1 walk, and 9 strikeouts over 5 innings. He finishes at 11-4 with a 3.56 ERA. So a really nice performance from him, and potentially will make moving on from Tyler McGill even easier than it would have been otherwise. So taking a look at the final standings here, still ended up 7th. So last year we were tied for 7th with the Phillies. This year we were alone in 7th, 20 games ahead of the Phillies, who had the worst record in baseball. Moved from 71 wins to 72 wins. So a very small amount of progress. Looks like the Mets ended up taking out the Braves for the division title there. The Mets and the Braves, the 2 only 2 100-win teams in all of baseball. 3 of the wild cards from the Eastern Division in both leagues, with the Braves, the Pirates, and the Nationals. Wild cards along with... we've got a tie with the Reds and the Cubs here. So they're going to have to figure out how that is decided. And then, the expansion stars, Orioles and the Yankees, 3 wild cards from the AL East, along with the Astros in the AL West. Nashville came into the league the same time as us, 88 and 74. So clearly they have done a much better job building a contender than we have thus far. But our goal is to build something that is sustainable over the long term. And with the 1 game of progress we made this year, I don't know that we've got something sustainable over the long term yet. Our minor league system has dipped to 14th. Take a look at a couple of the key guys. Ali Ostendorf, who was our number 2 overall pick this year, 3-3 with a 3.94 ERA and rookie ball, is a 19-year-old. Joe Edwards, who was our 2nd-round pick this past season, ended up hitting 228 in 40 games in rookie ball for us as well in the FCL. Santiago Marte, 153 batting average for the former international amateur free agent. Edgar Ojeda hit 211 with 6 homers in rookie ball. And Rodolfo Carmona is still at our international complex when we look at the 5 top 100 prospects that we do have. We got our DSL team to be better this year, which was some progress, but our FCL team was absolutely brutal. Single A Marathon Keys, not good. Jamestown, respectable. Double A Utica, borderline, unrespectable. And Albany was respectable as a Triple-A team for us. So when all was said and done for our Wings here in 2027, a small amount of improvement, not as much improvement as I would have hoped. We do potentially have some money to spend this upcoming off season with the trades that we made near the trade deadline, getting rid of some older players. So that should be positive. Fan interest has dipped a bit with the mediocre performance on the field. Revenue per game only slightly higher this year. The increase in ticket prices largely offset by fewer people attending each game. We'll find out what our ultimate budget is for next year in the coming weeks as we get to the end of the postseason. In our next episode, we'll do a complete debrief on all of our players over the course of the season. Taking a look at the team statistics, 72 and 90 record. We were 6 games below Pythagorean expectations, so that tells me that maybe there's better times ahead. Winning record at home, but certainly need to be winning more than 30 games on the road. Brutal 300 winning percentage in 1-run games. And we did fail in our goal to go better than 500 over the last 2+ months of the season that we laid out at the start of this episode. 3rd in the NL in stolen bases, certainly largely because of the 2 guys that we talked about that we brought up, Honeycutt and Seifu. Ended up 11th in the National League in runs scored. So we did make some progress. 2.5 months ago, 3 months ago, we were basically last or second to last in the vast majority of these hitting categories. So we did hit a little bit better down the stretch. The issue is we ended up 11th in runs allowed as well. We were not trending in the right direction as far as the amount of runs that we were giving up. Starters ERA 9th in the AL, 4.30, middle of the pack. Certainly with the investments that we made in Bieber and Ohtani in the free agent market, And then also the fact that we made the big trade for Painter, certainly would have expected a little better than that, and hopefully we'll get better than that next year. The defense was also poor. No other way to say it when you're 13th in defensive efficiency and 14th in zone rating. Obviously not going to dig into all of the stats now. Mentioned that we'll do that in our next episode, but do want to check in on Deshaun Seifu and where he ended up. The former number 1 overall draft pick, his first full year in the majors, ended up hitting just over 300, 302, led the National League with 15 triples despite playing just 88 games. So certainly expect that he is going to be a force as far as hitting balls into the gaps and putting a lot of pressure on teams defensively, as well as their pitchers and catchers when he's on first base. Stole 59 bases in 64 attempts, 818 OPS. 3.4 WAR on the season. So certainly would think that Deshaun Seifu, who is listed as the number 36 prospect in baseball, is going to hopefully get some serious consideration for Rookie of the Year. And would certainly think that Honeycutt, who came up around the same time, will get some votes as well after hitting 276 with the 18 doubles and 16 homers. 852 OPS on the year. Number 47 prospect in baseball. So expecting big things from both of those guys going forward as well. And we'll do a full review on everyone on our team and start thinking about our plans for the off season in our next episode. I guess just in the interest of checking in on 2 guys that we did mention as well, so you don't have to wait for all the information. Miguel Blaze, we did mention he was a 2020 guy, the Rule 5 pick from the Nationals, hit 245, 31 doubles, 26 homers, 21 steals. Pretty much an average offensive player, 2 wins above replacement, thanks to his pretty good defense out in center field. So we may have found our center fielder of the future there. And then Shane Bieber led the league in ERA, so we can't have asked for much more. We're hoping when we brought him on board he was going to be a 5-inning pitcher with 170 innings pitched over 33 games started, slightly better than 5 innings a start for us. 10-6 record, 2.65 ERA, league best. Looks like he probably got a bit lucky with a 278 BABIP and a 394 Sierra. But the point in bringing him on board was to see whether he would be an effective 5-inning pitcher for us. Certainly seems to have fit the bill on that front. We front-loaded the contract on purpose because we had money to spend this year. So team option of $8 million for next year. Certainly think we will be executing that. And if he performs similarly next year to the way that he performed this year, would think that we're also going to end up exercising that team option a year from now. So solid year from Shane Bieber in an otherwise somewhat disappointing year for the Wings. But we're going to focus this offseason on ensuring that we make more substantive progress next year in 2028. And until our next episode, thanks so much for watching and hope you have a great day.